Welcome to Faith and Freedom. For the next few minutes, we hope to inform, inspire, and encourage you as we discuss the legal victories and challenges to your fundamental freedoms and religious liberties. Faith and Freedom comes to you from Liberty Counsel, a civil liberties education and legal defense organization. Join us now as Matt Staver, the President and General Counsel of Liberty Counsel, explains the latest legal issues all across this country in the courtrooms of America. Liberty Counsel is winning the battle for your constitutional freedoms.
Liberty Counsel clears the way for gospel tract distribution. Hi, I'm Matt Staver, founder and chairman of Liberty Counsel and dean of Liberty University School of Law. We'll talk about this today on Faith and Freedom. And joining me is Matt Barber, director of cultural affairs for Liberty Counsel and associate dean for the law school. Matt, this is a case where Liberty Counsel did not have to go to court. And most of the cases that we have do not require us to go to court. 95% or so of the cases that we are involved with are resolved without going to court. The other 5% that do go to court, we have a very high success rate on. This is one that did not go to court but was resolved successfully, and it is regarding a legal bulletin in Indiana where in Indianapolis, Indiana will now clarify the free speech rights of street evangelists for local law enforcement officers. They were prohibiting protected speech. In Indianapolis, a group of Christians were distributing gospel tracts in the public rights-of-way at major events, and they were being regularly shut down by law enforcement. The good news is we got involved, and now as a result of that, they are redoing and have issued these legal bulletins to give the parameters of what the rights are for these street evangelists.
Well, Matt, Liberty Counsel is a legal, public policy, and educational organization. We spend a lot of our times educating public entities, law enforcement, school districts, and so forth on the First Amendment because, unfortunately, so many of them have been misled through a disinformation campaign by groups like the ACLU, People for the American Way, Americans United for Separation of Church and State, trying to twist and mold the Constitution into something they want it to be, not something that it truly is. So the vast majority of cases that we deal with, we simply present the facts to people. They are usually surprised to see what the courts have actually ruled, surprised to see what the First Amendment actually says. And most of them, even though they may have been operating illegally, as in this case with trying to shut down these street preachers, once they're educated, most of them will act in good faith and correct the mistake. This is a great victory. We have many victories like this that even go unreported. And sometimes we do end up in court where we have school districts and so forth that do have hostility toward the First Amendment and toward freedom of religious expression and speech. But in this case, once these individuals were corrected, they did the right thing.
That's right. In fact, what we have is John Jacob. He, along with a group from the Good News Messengers, or the Good Messengers, they were distributing tracts during the NCAA Final Four outside of Lucas Oil Stadium. They were on a public sidewalk well outside the stadium property, but they were approached by two police officers, and they were questioned. After learning that John was handing out gospel tracts, he was told, you need to come with us. John was then escorted into the stadium building where he had his belongings searched, and he was then accused of illegally soliciting on private property. Now, he was on a public sidewalk when he was doing this. He was instructed that he needed to sign a trespass form, and when he refused to do so, he ultimately found out that the form falsely claimed that he had been asked previously that day to leave, which was not true. Others who were leafleting were also asked to stop, and they were told that the NCAA secured a 6-mile restricted zone around the stadium. So now that we got the NCAA, they're all of a sudden, because they're using this stadium, allegedly this public property becomes private property under the NCAA. Well, that makes no sense. They said, therefore, in this 6-mile zone, you couldn't distribute anything that was not authorized by the NCAA. They claimed that the leafleting activities made them vendors, and thus they were subject to having to obtain permission from the organizers of this event, the NCAA. Well, this occurred at other events as well, Rib Fest and the 500 Festival Mini Marathon. That's how they were operating. It wasn't just for this NCAA. So John called Liberty Counsel. We then sent a letter to the public officials, the police enforcement officers, provided that this restricted zone was unconstitutional. And now the city attorneys have assured that they agreed with our statement, and they will reissue this department legal bulletin so as to make sure this never happens again.
Unfortunately, Matt, we're seeing a trend here where more and more agencies, municipalities, people like the NCAA and others are using this notion of free speech zones in order to circumvent the free exercise clause of the First Amendment. Here, clearly stretching things to try to say that leafleting here and spreading the gospel message is somehow acting as a vendor and so forth, jumping through as many hoops as they possibly can in order to circumvent the First Amendment, and in so doing, violating the First Amendment rights of the individuals that they're dealing with here. We're seeing this more and more. Why do you suppose this is?
Well, there is a lack of principal understanding of the constitutional freedoms and the origin of these liberties and the inalienable right to freedom of speech. And I think that's what you have happen. And you have no ultimate objective guidelines. You really have a deterioration of the rule of law. That's really what happens. And therefore, the decision makers become the law, and it's whatever they decide it to be. I know going back, the first time we ever encountered something like this was in the early to mid-1990s. And it was a man by the name of Martin Wishnowsky. Martin Wishnowsky was an individual who wanted to pass out little palm-sized Bibles, and they actually had scripture verses in there. It wasn't the entire Bible, but it looked like a little miniature Bible. It had scripture verses and it had the gospel in it. And he wanted to pass it out outside of the Fargo Dome in North Dakota. In Fargo, North Dakota. It's a 30,000-seat dome. And there was a Ted Nugent concert coming up and an Amy Grant concert. And the people the government who operated the dome said that whenever you have an Amy Grant or Ted Nugent or anybody else, you have to get permission from the person who's doing the event to be on a public sidewalk outside. And so they said no. We ended up filing a lawsuit, and it's called Wishnowsky versus Fargo Dome, Fargo, North Dakota. We ended up winning the case. Martin then would go out periodically and pass out several thousand Bibles. And I remember shortly after we won the case, he sent us information that he passed out 3,000 of these Bible gospel tracts. Well, Martin Wishnowsky now is a second-year student, PhD from Harvard University, but he's a second-year law student at Liberty University School of Law. Yeah,
and still shaking things up. He caught that legal bug after this case and decided his PhD from Harvard wasn't enough. And so now he is part of the Liberty University School of Law family, and what a sharp fella he is.
He is. And in fact, he's actually been quoted in the newspaper that pursuing his JD at Liberty University School of Law is much more rigorous than pursuing his PhD at Harvard University. I would also add probably much more substantive as well. But Martin is a great guy that is going to be a great attorney, solidly pro-life, dedicated Christian, but he was involved in this very same kind of thing, and so it's not unusual to see these domes or these arenas where you have some of these policies. So if you know of an arena in your area, a basketball arena or maybe a big football arena, find out whether or not these same kind of policies are being used there. Now, you can't go into the arena because that is being rented by that particular event or organizer. But outside of the arena, there's always these public sidewalks, and those never get transformed into private venues simply because someone is renting the interior of that arena.
Well, and unfortunately, it really does boil down to viewpoint discrimination. They find a certain kind of speech they don't want, they don't like, and so they make some arbitrary rule to try to quash that speech. Well, folks, that is unconstitutional. And again, in this case, at least in Indiana, we were able to educate the city, and they ended up doing the right thing.
Well, you can go to Liberty Counsel's website for more information. If you know of a situation that affects family, faith, or freedom, you may come across it on the internet or in your newspaper. You may hear about it over the water cooler at work. Give us a call, send it to us, because we may not know about it, and if we don't know about it, we're not going to get involved. If we did not have a contact from John Jacob in Indianapolis, Indiana, about the situation at the NCAA Final Four, we wouldn't have gotten involved, and this policy would still be in effect. So get us involved, get us information. Go to Liberty Counsel's website, lc.org. You can also have we urge that you pray as well as financially support Liberty Counsel. All of the activities that we do are pro bono and free of charge. Go to our website for more information. Sign up for the Liberty Counsel Action Grassroots email right there on the front page. And then also click on the Freedom Federation icon and be part of our social networking, blogging, and events component of Liberty Counsel's website.
You have been listening to Matt Staver of Liberty Counsel. Our hope is to encourage and inspire you to stand up for your faith, family, and freedoms. We can accomplish a lot when we work together. Get informed and get involved today. Sign up for our free monthly newsletter, The Liberator. We will send it out to you free of charge. Stay informed with our Liberty Alert email update. Just click on the website at www.lc.org or call us at 1-800-671-1776. Tune in next time to learn more about your rights right here on Faith and Freedom.